Okay,
All right.
here we are. Ann and Dean back at it again, and today we're going to be reviewing episode 3 of True Detective Night Country. I'm wearing my hat because it's cold in this episode.
Yes. It's
all
cold
these
in
episodes.
episodes.
The whole thing is cold.
The whole thing. I don't envy them
It's
living
night.
there. Yeah. Yes.
All right. All right. So this episode I thought was a little strange. You know, there's a lot of weirdness.
I thought we saw a lot we had some flashbacks to very important things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little history comes up. A little bit of the past.
A couple times, yeah.
For sure. In fact, it starts off with a scene from the past, 7 years ago.
Yes.
Where Navarro is responding to some kind of she's got to go arrest Annie K.
Yes, for trespassing.
Something like that, yeah.
But when she arrives, she hears screaming, and you think maybe something horrible's happening.
Turns out it's just a baby being delivered.
Yes. There's it's a pool birth, a water birth. And Navarro, she joins in.
Yeah.
She kind of becomes a part of it.
Yep. So it's pretty dramatic, and then it kind of settles down to like, oh shit, we're delivering a baby. The baby's not breathing at first. They revive it, and it's okay. But that gives you a little insight into the past with Navarro and Annie K. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's next?
Then we have our credits. We go to Hank is on the warpath for this missing scientist.
Mm-hmm.
He has brought his hillbilly buddies to help with the search.
Bunch of dipshits with shotguns, hunting rifles.
Yeah. Doesn't bode well.
Mm.
And Navarro reminds him, we want this guy alive, and he's like, do we?
Do we?
Why?
Yeah. So I still am suspicious of Hank's motives here.
Right? Yes, Hank is a very interesting, suspicious character.
Mm-hmm.
He's not very trustworthy. We get a little insight into Navarro and Danvers' past. Danvers tells Pete about their last case together, about William Wheeler, who had a really long rap sheet of offenses.
Yeah.
But when he gets out, he gets together with this 18-year-old who he beats the crap out of all the time.
Yep.
Which eventually leads to...
he kills her.
Yes. A murder-suicide, as Danvers says.
Yeah. But this is the most interesting scene so far in this series, is that she's telling one story and what they're showing is different. And this is very much like season 1, where Marty and Rust are telling one story and showing a completely different reality. Yeah.
So they arrive, they get a phone call to go to the house, and they arrive, and William is still alive, and he starts whistling Twist and Shout, and he's looking at them ominously.
Yeah.
And we don't actually see what happens to him, so everything we say would be a hypothesis.
Yeah, so my hypothesis is that either Navarro or Danvers shoots him, and then they have to stage it like he killed himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something weird that happens. Navarro had found an orange.
Yeah.
And then she's out on the tundra. That's where she's been assigned to go search. She tosses the orange out into the darkness, and it comes rolling back.
Which could happen naturally, or there could be a ghost.
Or it could be something. I mean, she tosses it pretty far to have it come back
It
pretty
seems
quickly.
odd that it didn't make a lot of sense for it to roll back the way it did.
And then there's like a whispering voice that says, oh.
Help us?
Help us, yes.
Yeah.
So that's something strange that happens.
Lots of weird stuff.
We have Navarro and Danvers going through the evidence from the trailer.
Yes, from Clark's trailer, is that his name?
Yes.
Ray Clark?
Raymond Clark, yes. It was a photo. We find out that Clark and Annie were keeping the relationship a secret. Annie wanted it a secret. But then they do find a picture that was taken by somebody else. And that's where they see some blue dye on the photo and realize the hairdresser knew.
Yeah, the lady who dyes hair or cuts hair, yeah.
So they go to the hairdresser. Susan, I believe, is her name.
Okay.
Just so she has a name. Yes.
And she tells us a story about how she cut everybody's hair out at Salal, and she took Annie along one time, and that's how she met Clark.
Even though she didn't want Annie to come with.
Yeah.
We don't know why, but she really seemed to she's like, I didn't want her to come with, but I guess it was nice that she was there. Sorry, I just thought that was interesting. So
Yeah.
yes, and then she meets Clark. They hit it off after he sees her tattoo, the spiral tattoo.
And the hairdresser tells us that the spiral tattoo came from a dream that Annie was having multiple nights, and after she got the tattoo, she stopped having the dream. Of course, the spiral is the same spiral that we see from season 1.
Yes.
With the Yellow King and all
Carcosa.
that. Carcosa. Yeah.
We find out that the hairdresser, Susan, was also dating somebody, Oliver, the equipment manager, who left shortly before Annie's death.
Mysterious.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's out on the ice, I believe is what she said.
Mm-hmm. So they try to track him down. We'll come to that later. But
yes, that starts the hunt for him, and they assign a lot of people to find him.
The song Twist and Shout rears its head a couple more times in odd places, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's fun.
Yes. For different people. Danvers hears it when she's at home, and then Navarro
hears it again?
Yeah.
Right. Even though Navarro wasn't even in the storage room where the story was being told that brings this all back, there's some kind of connection there. Anyways.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have Danvers' stepdaughter going to the protests about the mines, where they talk about stillbirths, bad water, and animals acting strangely or just dying. And
they're talking about all the stuff that the mine is supposedly doing to the environment around them and the people. And so it's a protest meeting. And she's recognized by somebody as the police chief's daughter or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she comes home. There's a little confrontation there.
The mom, Danvers, is like, do you know what happens to those people? She's not happy.
Yeah.
And makes her wipe off her
chin tattoo thing.
Yes. We see Danvers go to visit, I don't know how to say his name. Kavik,
yeah.
In an ice fishing hut.
Mm-hmm.
She asks him to
old boyfriend.
Yes, research fuck buddy. Can I say that? Okay,
sure.
Okay, Oliver. To use his sources to find Oliver for her. He says, "Well, I need something in return, baby. I want information."
So she tells him a story about
yes.
her life and where she grew up and where she was born and what happened with her dad and her mother. And the mother apparently was crazy. We kind of already knew that from earlier episodes. But then she says that she was killed and the murder was never solved. I feel like that's very significant to the story somehow.
Yes. There's a lot of dead people.
Yeah.
Then Navarro's out on the tundra. She sees somebody and chases after them, and she slips and falls.
Hits her head, and then has sort of a dream or a flashback or something to a scene in the desert where she's sitting on the ground and a child touches her shoulder and says, "Tell my mama that I something."
Oh,
what does she say?
Yeah,
the kid.
She says something important. My notes are everywhere. So, tell my mommy. I think that's all she wrote, is tell my mom.
And we couldn't hear what to tell. Yeah. So it's just something.
And then she receives a phone call about her sister right after she kind of comes back to.
Yeah.
That her sister went.
A little nuts.
Yeah.
And took off. But before she left, she said something about someone is coming. And so we don't know what that means yet. But she finds her sister out by the shipwreck. And they're talking about, the idea of going crazy and what does that mean? Yeah.
And
then we go to the hospital?
We are at the ice with the vet.
Oh, the ice with the vet. Yes.
Yes. The vet is a cousin of Pete's, the cop.
Mm-hmm. Pete.
His name is Vince. He came to look at the bodies, and he notes that they were dead before they froze. And he's seen it before with terrified caribou.
Which happened in the first episode. Yeah, that's interesting.
Being frozen instead of... because freezing is kind of it's more of a
fall asleep. It's very peaceful. But these guys were terrified. He thinks they had cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Navarro and Danvers go to the Nomad camp where Oliver is, because they find out where Oliver is. Mm-hmm. Oliver is very standoffish, so is everybody else there. We really don't get much information except all he asks about is Lund dead.
They tell him that all of his friends at the Tasal place are dead, and he says Lund. And Lund is the only one that has actually survived the encounter, except for the guy that's missing.
Yeah. But we haven't seen Lund yet because he's been in a coma and he's lost both his legs and
maybe he was going to lose a hand or something.
And they weren't sure. Yeah. They couldn't.
But it's interesting that Oliver only asked about Lund, and he's the only one that survived the encounters.
Yes.
Yeah, the problem.
And yes, so it's very brief, their visit with him, and that leads us to the hospital because they get a phone call saying that he's awake.
Yeah.
He's insane though. He's just screaming when
he's blind. His legs are gone.
They did amputate an arm, and then the other hand was all gangreney looking too.
It was horrible. But he's screaming. Yeah.
He reminded me of like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt a little bit.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun life. So he's talking kind of gibberish. He says, she's awake. We awoken her. Did he say we woke her up?
I thought, yes. I wrote she's awake.
And he says she's in the ice. He doesn't say she's on the ice. She's in the ice, which is different.
The nurse goes to sedate him because he's getting crazy. And then a hillbilly fight breaks out in the lobby, so they pull...
This is Hank's hillbilly posse. They're in the hospital for some reason. The cops and the hillbillies are fighting in the lobby, and this distracts everybody except for Navarro. Navarro stays with the patient, Lund.
Yes, but she is watching the fight from the door, so she doesn't see when the patient suddenly, slowly sits up.
Totally weirdo, classic horror film, sit up in bed kind of instant thing.
And he has a terrifying, creepy voice.
Totally different voice. And I just wrote down voice from hell.
I wrote down creepy voice. Your mother says hello.
Your mother says
She's
hello.
waiting for you. And he's like pointing with his hands this way.
Yeah, some kind of weird point.
Then he starts coding.
Yeah, and then he's out. Mm-hmm. Now, meanwhile, there's a fight breaking out, and it seems like it seemed to me, I didn't see a lot of this, but it seemed like the hillbillies are fighting with the cops, or the cops are trying to arrest the hillbillies. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going on. They haven't explained that, so there's a melee that's going on in there.
Yeah. So, he crashes the fight, and then... everything's kind of calmed down. Pete is there in the hospital, too, with Annie's phone that he has finally cracked open. And we get to see a video.
That Annie left right before she died that might show some evidence of what killed her. She looked like she was in an ice tunnel.
Cave. Yeah.
Ice cave,
I was thinking a tunnel, yeah. Sort of ice.
And she's definitely terrified. She says she found it.
Yeah.
What did she find?
Yes.
What was she looking for?
Yeah.
That she found?
And then she's like, if anybody finds this, my name is Annie. And then...
then something kills her.
Screams, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and man, it was weird. It was a weird episode. Lots of questions.
Yeah.
I'll say this. There was a long scene where they're driving in the car and they're trying to kind of do a dialogue back and forth sort of thing like episode or season 1.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have the same impact. It doesn't have the same... There's no punch to it, compared.
Yeah, it just... I agree. I was like, oh, they're getting philosophical, but it doesn't... It's not the same.
I'm not bought in,
No.
I mean...
We did just rewatch season 1. Recently,
just to kind of compare these two, and that might have been a mistake.
No, I don't think it was a mistake. I think this is better than season 2, which didn't even capture my imagination at all.
Yeah.
And I didn't even attempt season 3. So I still find this season interesting and want to know more. But yeah, season 1 just drew you in. And
oh man, we couldn't stop. We binged season 1.
Yeah.
We really did, and we've both seen it before,
Multiple times.
So, yeah, but this one just doesn't have the same. I mean, there's some interesting parts to it, but it's and I've said this before. I don't think it's fair to compare season 2, 3, and 4 now to season 1. It shouldn't have the same label. I don't think, because it's just not as compelling. None of them were. And I like the other seasons too, but they're just not as good.
Yeah.
How else can you say it? All right. Anything else?
Maybe it's just too many women. Season 1, it was really male dominated. The women were sluts. The men were the.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Let's keep it simple. Right?
All right.
Just men.
We can cut
no
that out.
women.
Yeah, because in season 2 there's women cops, and I mean,
yeah. You didn't watch season 2, so you don't.
I can't.
You don't know. It was okay. It was good.
Okay.
It's just not as good as season 1. It just isn't.
It's not. All right. Put your comments below. Tell us what you think about what's happening. Any theories you have?
Yes, I'd love to hear your theories. Write them down.
I'm hoping things come to be normal. I don't want anything paranormal. I will say that. I'm hoping.
You don't want to go.
No, I'm hoping like things are kind of solved. I mean, they do talk about ghosts in season 1. About like Rust talks about, do you believe in ghosts?
Do you believe in ghosts? And I thought maybe that when he says that, he sees a little girl standing on the side of the road, and I'm wondering if that was his little girl. You didn't seem to think that was the same.
I didn't think so, but I mean, it could, and they talk about Alaskan spirits and stuff. So I mean, there could be like
some kind of
pulse of the earth and the dead. But I hope there's there's something in this world that explains everything.
Yeah, you don't want a completely supernatural explanation for what's going on here.
No.
Huh? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, we're not Mulder and Scully, okay? All right.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Take care. We'll see you next time. Enjoy.
Truth is out there.